This week, I wanted to go back to my debunking roots and take a look at what Jeranism is doing. I regret all my life choices.
He is coming. Cover your butt.
Today, Jeranism will be reading an article written by Robert Sungenis. Jeranism describes Sungenis like this.
What's going on, everyone? It's Jaren from Jeranism, back with another video for you today. How Einstein Made the Earth Move. I'm going to be reading a 21-page PDF, which you can find a link to in the description. This is written in 2016 by Dr. Robert Sungenis, a known geocentrist. Many might know him as the executive producer of the movie The Principle, which, if you have yet to see that film, I highly recommend it. But Robert faces tons of criticism, well, as does anyone who questions the current model, but Robert also gets extra criticism, and in my mind, unfairly.
Let's make a couple of corrections to what Jaren just said. Sungenis is not a doctor. He has a PhD from Calamus International University. It's an unaccredited university, so his diploma is as useful as toilet paper. Next, let's dispel the idea that Sungenis is being persecuted for his dangerous ideas. People are critical of Sungenis not because he's against the establishment, but because he's a lying piece of shit. Not only does Sungenis lie about his PhD, he can't even make it through the first paragraph of his article without there being egregious lies. Now, you might be tempted to go easy on Jaren since he's just reading someone else's article. Well, Jaren describes Sungenis' article like this.
So again, this paper was written in 2016 by Robert Sungenis. The paper is very well written and completely sourced, so any quote that I read is sourced. If you download the PDF from the link in the description, you can find out exactly where that quote came from. Also, to get more details and many other important facts, you can obtain the DVD Journey to the Center of the Universe or the books Galileo Was Wrong and Geocentrism 101 at www.jttcotu.com. And so, without further ado, Albert Einstein, the Earth Mover, How Einstein Made the Earth Move When All the Experiments Showed It Didn't Move.
Not only does Jaren think that this is a well-written article, he is also confident that the quotes used are accurate, something that will become important later on. Lastly, Jaren is willing to promote Sungenis, so at the very least, he thinks that Sungenis' ideas are worth spreading. So, what does Sungenis have to say about how the Earth moves, or doesn't?
In his 1881 and 1887 experiments, Albert Michelson discovered the Earth was not moving around the Sun. As Michelson himself described the results of his own experiment, this conclusion directly contradicts the explanation, which presupposes that the Earth moves.
First of all, Jaren is referring to the Michelson-Morley experiment, something that I've already talked about in another video. There will be a link in the description. The short and sweet of it is that unlike what flat earthers want to believe, the Michelson-Morley experiment did not demonstrate the Earth wasn't moving. Rather, the experiment failed to detect the ether by testing the idea of ether drag. Second, let's take a closer look at this quote from Michelson. Just by looking at the quote, you should see a couple of details that raise some red flags. There is an ellipsis in this quote. A single sentence needing an ellipsis should set off some bullshit detectors. And with good reason. A single sentence, unless written by Ernest Hemingway, is not long enough to need an ellipsis. This ellipsis is not used to shorten a bloated sentence. It is used to hide part of what the original author wrote. There is also a comma at the end of the sentence. This is a bit odd. If the sentence continues after the part quoted, then a second ellipsis should be used here to denote the truncated sentence. A comma here is suspicious. The whole quote by Michelson-Morley goes like this. The conclusion directly contradicts the explanation of the phenomenon of aberration, which has been hitherto generally accepted, and which presupposes that the Earth moves through the ether, the latter remaining at rest. Let's compare the two quotes, the one that Sungenis used and the actual quote. According to Sungenis, Michelson said that the conclusion to his experiment contradicts the explanation that the Earth moves, and of the phenomenon of aberration which has been hitherto generally accepted, and which presupposes, is irrelevant to the intended meaning of the original quote. What Sungenis has done here is fabricated his own quote of Michelson using sentence fragments of an actual quote that said nothing resembling what Sungenis would have you believe. Michelson is actually writing about how his experiment contradicts the explanation of aberration, which has been widely accepted. The widely accepted explanation for stellar aberration at the time of Michelson was that of the ether. Michelson here is pointing out that the explanation offered by the ether is contradicted by his experiment. He is not saying that the Earth is not moving. He is saying that the ether can't explain what was observed in his experiment. Sungenis also cuts off the last part of the sentence that also refers to the ether. Sungenis focuses on the part of the quote that talks about the Earth moving, but entirely ignores how the quote is talking about the Earth moving through the ether. Michelson is not saying the Earth doesn't move. He's saying the Earth doesn't move through the ether. Sungenis is being incredibly dishonest within the first paragraph of this article. If Michelson truly meant to say what Sungenis insinuates that Michelson said, there would be no need for deceptive quote mining. A direct quote alone would be enough. This is the article that Jeran called well written. While Jeran may not have written these sentences himself, Jeran is spreading this obvious lie, making him as complicit in deception as Sungenis is. This, Jeran, is why people criticize you. Not because you're going against the mainstream, but because you're a lying piece of shit.